Joel Salatin. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Could you start with an introduction of who you are and what you do, please?
Sure. So I'm Joel Salatin. Our family co-owns Polyface Farm in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley here in Virginia which is kind of on the eastern edge of the U.S. And and we've been here since 1961. My mom and dad bought the farm in 1961 when I was just 4 years old, and so I grew up here. And Dad was an accountant, mom was a school teacher. Those off-farm jobs paid for the land. And then as I came up, I was very interested in the farm, and so when I started then, and I came back to the farm full time after a short stint in journalism in September 24, 1982, and we have now built on that platform a pastured livestock, direct marketed, branded operation. We produce beef, pork, chicken, turkey, lamb, duck eggs, rabbit, and we have a lot of forests. So we have a sawmill and do forestry work as well as firewood and things, and have a full bore apprenticeship stewardship program. And I've written, I don't know what book number 16 is coming out here in about 3 weeks. So written some of that, and we just have been very, 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 very blessed.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know how to explain it. So I'll let you go for it. But how would you? Because I know you're not a massive fan of these labels such as like regenerative agriculture and stuff, as they can kind of be manipulated and stolen and stuff. So, yeah, could you explain like how you would, I don't know, classify your farm if you would, and then how it is different from a conventional farm, the main ways?
Yeah, well, so there's several ways. I mean, one is that we're pasture based. So the livestock, the animals, I mean, including the chickens and the turkeys and pigs and everything, are on pasture as opposed to confinement feeding operations. Now we do house the laying chickens and the pigs. We house them for about 100 days in the dead of winter. We get usually a couple feet of snow. Let's see, that would be 2/3 of a meter of snow. um, and and so winter gets a little bit severe here, more severe certainly than in the UK. And so things come in the winter. We don't have the meat chickens at that time. We don't have turkeys at that time. Um, and and when we do feed inside, we use deep bedding. So they're not on slatted floor or concrete floor or anything. It's on deep bedding. So we call it a carbonaceous diaper. And we have a large chipper that we use to work in fence lines and weeding and the thinning in the woods and things like that, to generate carbon to act as an absorptive diaper for the manure and urine that's generated in the wintertime. And then we turn that with pigs using fermented. We put corn in it. The corn ferments in the bedding pack. The pigs then come in and churn it up, turn it from anaerobic to aerobic compost, and that then is our fertility program on the fields. So it's a complete circle program. And so the animals are moving almost every day. The cows move every day. The broilers certainly move every day. The turkeys move every 2 days. We run an egg mobile behind the cows. The chickens then free range out, scratch through the cow patties, eat the fly larvae and grasshoppers and crickets and ticks and everything else, and basically sanitize the field after the cows have gone through. And that spreads out the cow patties, sanitizes it, and turns all of that insect protein into magnificent eggs. And so we don't have to use grubicides, parasiticides, and all the things that people normally do on cattle to keep them healthy. And so we're trying to tap into the ancient historical patterns of how birds and omnivores and herbivores, how have they coexisted, how have they worked together throughout history, symbiotically, and non-competitively, and that's the idea. Um, a couple other little specific things. Probably the single most important development we've done here that nobody sees when they come is we have about 16, 17 kilometers of water line that we've built permaculture style ponds up on high ground, and it gravity feeds over the whole farm this network of water line to dispense clean pressure water over the whole place without any pumps or electricity. And the reason it's all buried so nobody sees it, but it's absolutely critical. It's critical to have that kind of accessible water everywhere. If you're going to move the animals around all the time, they need water access. And so then we use of course portable tanks and portable troughs to be able to get them water wherever they want. And finally, I would just say that we do sell everything direct. So we're not selling into wholesale. We don't supply, big supermarkets. Everything is sold direct. We supply, I don't know what, 10,000 families. We have urban drop points that we service monthly directly from the farm, where people meet us at a rendezvous point, scheduled rendezvous point, and pick up their pre-ordered, prepaid food. And we work with, I don't know, about 12 other artisanal craft food producers, a dairy, kombucha, ferments, vegetable growers. We work with others in the area to create a broader array of options. And so we do, and we service a few institutions, some restaurants, as well as these families, and we ship nationwide via United Parcel Service, UPS, the brown folks.
Yeah, so it's quite like you said, acting, trying to kind of model nature how it would be, and then you've got it's for like quite a local thing. You do ship large scale, but
Yeah.
a thing that seems to come up often is kind of scalability and
Mm-hmm.
how large is the farm currently? How many people did you say you're currently serving?
Yeah, so there are about 22 of us that actually earn a living from the farm.
And in terms of people buying from you as well.
Oh, you mean how many customers?
Mhm.
Yeah, so we service probably somewhere around 10,000 families, um, you know, in a routine thing. Or people come and go, and so we serve. We have an on-farm store as well. I mean, it's hard to know exactly how many we serve because we have an on-farm store too, where people come by the farm. We have regular store hours, and people come by and buy here on the farm as well. So we have the shipping, we have the personal delivery where our truck goes to these urban drop points, which are, I think there's about 36 or 37 of those, all within 4 hours of us, and then we have the on-farm sales as well.
Yeah, okay. Because I spoke to Will Harris from White Oak Pastures. I
Mm-hmm.
think you probably know him. And he kind
Yeah.
of said that the model he uses is almost like it's easily replicable but not scalable. So you couldn't have like a massive farm doing this, but you could have lots of smaller ones. Would that be accurate with how you guys run it, or would it be possible to do this at like a large
Well,
scale?
yeah, I'm not. Um, I don't. I wouldn't agree with that completely. I do think that Will and I would agree very much that that our models are more about scale through duplication rather than scale through centralization. That's for sure. We would definitely agree on that. I'm not sure that that it that the idea of, well, one entity couldn't get very large with this idea. I think it could, if you could actually manage the personnel. The thing about this is that in our kind of farming, it takes a great level of skill and understanding to, if you're not going to use pharmaceuticals and drugs, you have to have more observational skills. It does take more labor. It takes way less concrete, less energy, less drugs, or no drugs in our case. It takes a lot less of other things, but the thing that it does take more of is labor. So then your scale is often limited not only by labor, uh, just having high quality labor, but then also just simply the market. And so, yeah, could we have a multi-billion dollar, could we turn into a multi-billion dollar company? Absolutely. If we had enough, if we had enough skilled people and had enough market, absolutely. Now, I don't aspire to that. I have no dreams for that. I have no desire for that. I think in general, what I would like to see is duplication. Thousands of us doing this all over the place, but there's nothing inherent that precludes us from becoming, a large company if we duplicated it, internally rather than duplicating it externally.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So, trying to see. How's the response been? How's the kind of this area kind of changed since you got into it? Because it seems to be getting a lot more popular recently. This kind of regenerative, if I use that word, model. Do you see a lot more people interested in this, and a lot of other people trying to do this?
Yeah, you mean from a farming or a consumer?
From farming, people actually farms taking on these practices.
Yeah, there are certainly some. I mean, what we really see is the homestead movement, which is, yeah, there are commercial farms, but a lot of commercial farms grow out of kind of a homestead movement where, okay, we're gonna grow food for our own family, and if you have an entrepreneurial bent and you have some savvy, and you say, hey, this is working pretty good. Let's see if we can, sell. Instead of growing two pigs for ourselves, let's grow four. We'll keep two and sell two. And things just kind of organically develop from that. The the industry itself. I mean, the commercial industrial uh, orthodoxy, of course, is struggling with the aging farmer. The farmer's now averages 60 years old, and so there's a tremendous amount of uh, changes that have already come and will come with this changing of the guard, as farmers age out. And so generally these older farmers are not interested in new ideas, and but the younger generation is more interested in new ideas. And so I think a lot of this will a lot of the change will come not because current large scale farmers make a change, but because as they age out, their replacements will come in with a different mindset and make changes. And a lot of these changes are not just ecological or nutritional. A lot of these changes are being driven by economics. And so, I mean, for example, look at what's happened to chemical fertilizer costs since Putin invaded Ukraine. They've gone up, whatever, 300, 400%, way up. And so that's putting a tremendous amount of financial pressure on conventional chemically dependent farms. When you have that kind of economic constraint or pressure, on an operation.
Hmm. Yeah, could you talk a bit more? Are there any other examples? Because you mentioned about the economics kind of side of it. Because I
Yeah, well,
heard,
well,
I was
mhm.
going to say, Will Harris was saying that oftentimes this kind of model is a lot harder and usually can be more expensive.
Well, um, I mean, land doesn't cost anymore. There again, I'm not ready to yell the victim crowd. I think there are a lot of advantages here. I mean, one of the greatest advantages is when you use portable infrastructure, mobile infrastructure instead of stationary infrastructure. You don't have to own the land. So the biggest constraint for young people getting into farming, which is getting access to land, if you use portable infrastructure, whether it's cows with portable electric fencing, and so there's no feedlot, you're grass finishing. Cows, move themselves onto a grass, so the whole farm is operated with a couple of little wheelbarrow loads of electric fencing material and some water line. Poultry, completely mobile housing. Pigs, again, just electric fencing and some feeders. When the farm infrastructure is portable, then the land cost can come out of it, and so you can piggyback. You can permaculture style stack additional enterprises. There's not a dairy, not a cattle operation in the world that wouldn't benefit from pastured poultry on the same land, both before and behind the cattle, or sheep, or goats. And so the bird herbivore relationship is one of the most symbiotic, synergistic relationships on the planet. And my point being that there's not a single need for a single confinement poultry house in the whole world. There's not a single need for it. All that poultry should be linked up with herbivores in the production cycle, and by doing so, suddenly we take all that cost of the aluminum and the concrete, the tractors, the manure spreaders, all that big expensive infrastructure that's required to run a big chicken house, suddenly goes away, and you can get into this on a shoestring with mobile infrastructure. And if your deal goes bad, if the place that you're putting your farm on, if you decide to have a divorce, if the marriage goes sour, well, you pick up all your infrastructure, you go down the road to another place, and you start. And so, orchards can benefit from this. All, grain outfits can benefit from this. What we need is a highly integrated approach as opposed to a segregated approach. The problem is, in agriculture right now, we have a fundamentally segregated approach rather than an integrated approach. And as soon as you start integrating, you start lowering costs. And so, the other part of pricing and costing is that we are not foisting upon society any externalized costs from our farming operations. Industrial agriculture has an externalized cost, whether it's odors, or polluted water, or eroded soil, or nutrient deficiency, or super bugs from pharmaceutically induced survivors from Campylobacter, Salmonella, avian influenza, whatever it is. All of those superbugs, all of those things I just mentioned are externalized costs that society has to pick up from the industrial chemical approach. Since we don't foist any of that on the greater culture, all of our costs are picked up at the cash register. The fact is that many of the costs of industrial chicken, industrial milk, industrial beef, pork, whatever, those costs are not picked up at the cash register. A lot of them are picked up by government cleanup programs, by lawsuits, by just diminution of the commons. Poor water, poor soil, those kinds of things. And so those externalized costs get picked up outside the cash register. So while it may appear that it's more expensive to grow this food, in actuality, this is the cheapest food on the planet because all the costs are at the cash register.
Yeah. Okay. So with the traditional model, it's not priced in. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. You mentioned soil health a couple times. Can you talk about why that's so important? Because there's been a bit of a like save our soils movement kind of recently.
Sure, there is, and rightly so, because all of us depend on the soil. Ultimately, the soil is more important than bankers in London and the Wall Street in New York. We all depend on this tiny little thin layer of soil on the earth, and we're losing it, and we're still losing it way faster than we're rebuilding it. So, there's an old Chinese proverb that says, if you keep going the way you're going, you're going to end up where you're headed. And I think it's important to appreciate that if we don't arrest this soil deterioration, and which includes desertification, by the way, the Sahara is expanding. The south of the south of Spain there is becoming drier and drier. And so as these things develop, we need to arrest them. Well, how do we arrest them? Well, we arrest them with vegetation. What's the single fastest way to destroy soil? Well, it's through plowing and through monocultures, monocrops, or naked soil, single plant type species. So if you move to a more diversified approach, then then you can build soil. And so when it comes to herbivores, for example, around the planet, what you see is they're moving, mobbing, and mowing. They don't stay in one place. They don't eat corn. They don't eat chicken manure. They don't eat chicken feathers like we feed them here. They don't eat chicken manure like we feed them here, and they certainly don't eat dead cows like the experts told us to feed for 40 years, and then brought bovine spongiform encephalopathy, mad cow. When we go back to a kind of prehistoric abundance picture with this megaflora and megafauna, what we have then is soil building. What we're doing today on the planet is we're mining the soil that the system built over a period of time, and certainly we're doing that here in America, in the Midwest, with all of our pivot irrigation and monocropping systems. These are not building soil, and the soil is the most important thing. I think it's important to realize that here in North America, for sure, we actually produced more food 500 years ago than we produce today. People think, oh, look at all this, look at John Deere tractors and look at the chemicals and hybrid corn and all this stuff, and they think we're producing so much food. We actually produced more food 500 years ago than we do today. Now, humans didn't eat it all. We had 2 million wolves that needed 20 pounds of meat a day. We had between 100 and 200 million head of bison. We had 200 million beavers that ate more vegetables than all the people in North America today. And so it wasn't all consumed by people. Birds, Audubon recorded in his diary in the early 1800s, he said, I sat under a tree, I couldn't see the sun for 3 days for the flock of birds that flew over. Nobody sees a flock of birds like that these days. That was long before Tyson chickens and Pilgrim's Pride and Frank Perdue began closing chickens in houses. And so it should give us all pause to realize that in a pre-European state, North America was actually more productive than it is today. And so part of our theme here, our objective is, can we what was that highly abundant productive platform, and can we on a commercial scale with property boundaries, static property boundaries, how can we duplicate that kind of productivity?
Mm. And when you say like produced, do you mean produced by the land generally, or actually from farms?
I'm talking about the land, the actual productivity of the land.
So even without human intervention, things growing generally, would you include that in there?
You mean like wild areas?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if we want to back up just a little bit, the three great environments are open land, forest land, and water, or riparian areas, riparian forest and open land. Those are the three great environments. And so what we've done on our farm is we have tried to integrate those as much as possible, um, so that we have a lot of edge effect. And so, for example, you have forestal zones that stimulate squirrels, moles, and voles and chipmunks that feed the coyotes and foxes, so they don't mess with the chickens, for example. So you create a balanced ecology. Trees, for example, trees on steep hillsides act as hydraulic pumps to suck water up from down below and pump it up the hillside. Those are tremendous ecology elements. We've built a lot of ponds. The Australian PA Yeomans in the 1950s advocated that every farm should eliminate surface runoff. Surface runoff becomes a flood problem downstream, and 1/3 of all raindrops on the planet become surface runoff because they either come too fast for absorption or too much for absorption at the time they fall. So 1/3 of raindrops. So if you're in a 900 mil a 900 mil rainfall area, 1/3 of that would be 300 mil. Okay, and you're looking at I've got to do some quick conversion here from gallons to liters for you, but one acre inch of water. You're not supposed to do math in real time. Let's try to figure this out here.
Four
If we
point
say that
4.5 liters to 1 gallon.
4.5 liters per gallon. Okay, so that's 90,000 liters per acre, and now I got to go to hectare. An acre is about 2.4, right? Hectares.
I don't
Hectares
know.
like 2.4 hectares. So we'll multiply that by 2.4. So we're up in the neighborhood of, for just sake of discussion for right now, 200,000 liters per hectare. With an inch, which an inch is, what is it, like
2.5
40 something
centimeters.
centimeters, 2.5 centimeters. Okay, so if you are 1 inch, okay, so if you are in an 85, if you're in an 85 centimeter rainfall area, which the UK generally is higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
The UK generally is more like 100 centimeters. But let's just say 90 centimeters for sake of discussion. 1/3 of that would be 30 centimeters. All right. Divided by 2.5. 12. Okay, so that means that on average there in the UK, and I know I'm being very, very average here, but we're looking at something in the neighborhood of 2.4 million 2.4 million liters per hectare is runoff, surface runoff per year.
Okay.
2.4 million liters per hectare is surface runoff. So if you can capture that so that it doesn't become a flood problem downstream, and you can actually utilize that in a dry time, you can greatly increase the productivity. And the reason I'm using this, I'm a lover of ponds. We've built, I don't know what, 20 ponds here. We just continue to build ponds because, for example, in North America, 500 years ago, 8% of the land mass was water. 8%. Think about that. 8% was water. Today, it's less than 4%. Well, where did all that water come from? It was beaver ponds. Well, think of what all that water for evapotranspiration, cloud formation, ambient temperature amelioration through the mass of through the thermal mass of water, including the hydration for springs and streams and migratory waterfowl and all those things. The sheer hydration of the landscape with that much water was phenomenal in changing not only the climate but the productive capacity of everything around it. And so again, permaculture addresses this a lot and talks about the benefit of holding surface runoff, which doesn't steal water from anybody. It simply protects people downstream from being flooded, and hold that water on high ground so that it can be strategically dispensed during dry times. These are the kinds of things on a macro scale that would bring us back to the kind of abundant production that was here 500 years ago.
Yeah, let's just say thanks for attempting the conversions, because a lot of people from America, I don't know, they just seem to always assume everyone speaks in like inches, gallons, etc.
No, not at all. I'm well aware of. I'm pretty well traveled there, and so I'm fairly. Look, if I don't give you numbers that are meaningful, there's no sense in giving them. So I might as well give you numbers that are meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. Have you seen much, like, I guess, government or large business interest in this? Because you said you want this on a macro scale for this kind of, well, at least for that water example there. Is there any chance of getting much help from the government or anything like that, or is it going to have to be kind of more bottom up?
I think all real truthful, honest, authentic changes happen from the bottom up. The government is there to protect the status quo and make sure that what is continues to run smoothly. And the government, by definition, cannot be innovative because it has to make half of the people happy. And so by definition, the government can't be innovative. And so, innovation is going to happen from the grassroots, which is why ultimately, whatever changes are going to happen are going to have to be driven by the marketplace. Farmers have always adapted to the marketplace, and that's where I don't let consumers, non-farmers, that, oh, you dirty farmers, and they shake their hands at us, and you're eroding the soil, and you're abusing the animals, and you're well, you don't have to buy from farmers like that. No consumer has to buy from a farmer like that. So instead of pointing your finger at the farmers, how about you as a consumer step up to the plate here and think about, when you look through your plate, let's say you've got your plate of food in front of you. You look through that plate, the potatoes, the chicken, the macaroni, the whatever's on there, okay? You look through that plate. What's on the other side of that plate? What brought that food to your table is an entire system of production, processing, distribution, that handles everything from earthworms to the final person that puts the box on the truck. Okay, all that is handled. There's a chain. When you look through behind your plate at that chain, is that a chain? Is that a landscape? Is that a world that you want for your grandchildren? That's the question. That's the question. And what happens is 95% of the food being produced right now, especially in the industrialized countries like ours, does not create a landscape that's either A, regenerative and sustainable, or even a landscape that we'd actually want our grandchildren to inherit. So if it's going to change, it's not going to change because farmers change, because farmers are now such a tiny. Farmers produce for what the market wants, and if the market wants cheap food, and to pick up cheap food with expensive pharmaceuticals, and medical bills, if the if the health system is what's supposed to pick up the shortfall of nutrition, then that's the world we're going to have. But who wants that for their children? What we'd rather have is for the number of hospital beds to decrease, the number of health services to decrease, the number of heart attacks to decrease. And earthworms and soil biology to increase. That's what we want for our most of us, for our grandchildren.
Yeah. Okay. Can we talk a bit about decentralization now and why you prefer that to more centralized operations?
Well, we've just come through, as you know, we've just come through a bit of a black swan event with the whole COVID thing, and I'm sure there in the UK, you all, I mean, I watch the news, or I read the news. I don't have a television, so I don't do much TV news. But anyway, I know that you went through an upheaval just like we did here, and there was a bit of panic in April of 2020, and people were concerned about are we going to get enough food, or are we going to have things, and so. My question here in the U.S., and it's applicable for the U.K. as well. My first question to people is, well, let me ask you this: if instead of our food system being serviced by 300 mega processing facilities as a funnel to bring our food, to the local supermarket, if instead of 300 mega facilities of 2,000 to 5,000 employees processing the tomatoes and the beef and the milk and stuff, if instead of that we had 300,000 community scale 50 employee facilities bringing our food to the market, would we have had a bit as big a crisis, as big a shock in the system as we did? And the obvious answer is, of course not. Very interesting. You'll really like this. Somebody has done, I don't know if you're aware of it, a word count on British Parliament. You're going to love this. British Parliament, they went back 10 years and did a word count. How many times has the word efficiency or efficient been used versus the word resilient or resiliency? And what they found was, in the last 10 years, the use of the word efficiency has dropped by 50%, and the use of anything related to resiliency has doubled, has gone up 100%. And so it's just a fascinating idea. When you talk about awareness, you talk about, are people, becoming aware of these things? And And if British Parliament is a harbinger of things to come, it makes people like me very excited that our leaders are actually looking at resilience more than efficiency now. Because at the end of the day, if you're not resilient, there's nothing to be efficient about. Efficiency always has to come after resilience. First, you have to survive. Then you can talk about efficiency. But you don't talk about efficiency before you can even survive. And so decentralization and dropping, decentralization, increasing the number of nodes. I mean, think about cryptocurrency. All right. What's the big argument to cryptocurrency? Well, there's so many nodes on the planet that no single government could ever shut down, Bitcoin, because there's so many nodes all over the planet. And I'm already talking way over my understanding level, but I'm just telling you what people explain. And so they say it's the ultimate resilient element of transfer, because nobody can control it or shut it down because there are too many nodes out there. Well, the same thing is true in food. The more nodes we have coming into the food system, the more resiliency there is, because they're not all going to fail at one time. And so they're smaller ones, separated out farther, are a lot better, which, by the way, is probably one of the single biggest arguments against fake food, fake meat, lab meat, that whole argument. Because right now, as long as the sun shines and there's grass and rain, you can feed yourself. But if your food comes through a $1 billion laboratory of stainless steel that some multi-billionaire corporate interest with nefarious agendas controls, suddenly your democratized ability to sustain yourself, to find provenance, is dependent completely on this, a centralized laboratory, as opposed to your own backyard where you can actually grow something yourself. So that is a huge argument against the whole fake meat, lab meat protein idea. And if I may just say, Bill Gates, to when you realize that he has very publicly and clearly said that we can only save humanity if we drop the world's population by about 2/3, then the question is, what could a person who actually believes they will save humanity by killing 2/3 of it, by eliminating 2/3 of it, what could a person who really believes that ethically and morally justify doing? And there's not much on the table when you start asking those kinds of questions.
I haven't heard him say that. I knew he owned quite a lot of stock in like plant-based meat companies and stuff like this.
Right.
Yeah, another thing about like lab meat, from what I've heard currently, it doesn't seem to be economically viable, because they figured out, they're starting to realize that, well, a cow has got a lot of this stuff built in very well, like it's got an immune system, etc. Like trying to recreate all of that machinery is very difficult, it turns out.
Yeah, it is. That's why nothing has been grown successfully bigger than about now I'm back at liters, 4.5 liters times 5. All right. Like a 25 liter bucket. All right. Mm-hmm. A 25 liter bucket is about as big as they've been able to grow any of this stuff, because you simply can't duplicate the veins, the arteries, the liver, the kidneys, all the screening and straining and internal movement systems of a biological, of a living creature. The only thing that they can do is bubble, bubbles up through it to stimulate, movement in the vat, and then use some sort of a filtering system to filter out impurities. And And yeah, once they get past about, 5 liters is what they've been using mostly. But once they get past about a 25 liter, vat, then everything starts to break down because they simply can't. They don't have a circulatory system,
Mm.
and so it all breaks down.
Yeah. Okay. One kind of counter argument, I suppose, to the more decentralized model was it's kind of harder to regulate if you have so many different producers. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh my! Now that's a whole podcast. Uh, so so yeah so I do not believe that government regulation has created safe food. Now I know that statement sounds very, very radical, but let's think about Uber. Uh, what we desperately need right now is Uberization of the food system. You see, long time ago, people in a community, in a village, they knew who the fraudulent butcher, baker, and candlestick maker were in a community. They talked about, that guy's clean, that guy's dirty, that guy's good, that guy's bad, and they kind of self adjudicated and audited. Well, with the Industrial Revolution and centralization, as the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker got extremely large and corporate, they started building razor wires and having guard towers and everything around their facilities, and people began becoming concerned about what's going on behind the fence. And so when they were scared, they asked for government intervention and regulatory structure to police what was going on behind the fence. Well,
Mm.
what has actually happened is, rather than a police force, we've built a fraternity of revolving, regulators and corporate folks that kind of revolve between the two of them. Well,
Mm.
meanwhile, along came the internet. What we're doing right here, the internet, and suddenly we're able to have a face-to-face conversation. Almost, it's not the same as if we were in the same room, but it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly the internet democratized the ability to get authentic real-time information, so that it could become self-policing, which is what launched Airbnb, Uber, all these self-regulating. Why are they self-regulating? Because of the democratization of authentic auditing via the internet has recreated the village voice of the butcher, baker,
Mm.
and candlestick maker of 600 years ago. So it has atomized the global, and created a localized, uh, independent authentication system. And so when the industrial system asked for an industrial regulatory system, as people like us enter the marketplace, to our neighborhoods and our locales, where where we have a direct relationship with our customers, where you don't just go into the supermarket and try to read labels. We have an open door policy. People can come and visit our farm 24/7, 365. We have an open door policy. Anyone can come from anywhere in the world to see anything, anywhere, unannounced. That's our level of transparency. Well, guess what? That means there's a lot of iPhones and all sorts of photography and pictures and questions, and they all can upload directly into the public sphere. And suddenly people can self vet. They can find out, is this a clean outfit or a dirty outfit? Do these guys say what they're doing, or do they not say what they're doing? When they say natural, what does that mean? When they say free range, well, what does that mean? And people can self govern and organize themselves in a self governing system, which is, of course, what Adam Smith was all about, with the invisible hand of the marketplace. He said, we don't need that government regulatory oversight. What we need is for the government to get out of the way, and let the marketplace pick the winners and losers so that everybody can get there. So trust me, one of the reasons we have such a centralized and fragile food system right now, not to mention a shall we say, a cheating, whether the cheating is nutritional, soil, or animal abuse. Let's just, a cheating food system. The reason it cheats is because the regulatory climate puts burdensome, unnecessary hurdles in front of newcomers, entrepreneurial newcomers to the marketplace, and it's very difficult for us to enter the marketplace. And so, if you broke down these hurdles, and so I'll get off the soapbox here by just saying, if we allowed, listen, if we allowed you to come to my farm, if you want to come to my farm and look around, smell around, ask around, and you and I want to engage in a voluntary food transaction, why is that any of the government's business? I mean, we live in the time of choice. We can choose to men can marry men, women can marry women. We want the government out of our bedrooms. We want the government out of our marriages. We want the government out of our families. You can even choose whether you want to be a man or a woman. We say we want complete autonomy and choice. Well, is there any choice that we make that is more intimate and critical for us than the fuel for our bodies, than what we're going to eat for our bodies? We need autonomy to be able to choose. So if somebody wants to come and get raw milk, let them get raw milk. If they want to get a backyard butchered pork and get homemade sausage, they could get sausage. We need to have some place where producer and consumer can transact food without a license and a bureaucrat getting between that choice and that voluntary consenting activity among consenting adults.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, just to bring it back to the kind of centralization argument. So it sounds like what you're saying is, due to the massive size, there's a lot more closed doors, and also, I suppose, an increased chance of capturing corruption, because these enterprises are so big. If they can do that, then they'll profit massively.
Yes, absolutely. The element. It's just fascinating that what was started, and I'm not gonna discredit or impugn the sincere desires of people who started and asked for government oversight. Okay, I'm not. These are all sincerely held, well-meaning, well-intended things. But what happens over time is the coziness, and the coziness then within the industry and the government creates, as you said, corruption, and a new level of opaqueness, that then it becomes a self-feeding, coziness, corruption, opaqueness, coziness, corruption, opaqueness, and it just continues to flourish on its own. And desperately what we need is transparency, so that if we had transparency, or if we had transactions clothed in transparency, then that creates its own authenticating, auditing system, like Uber. So my point is, who would have guessed 30 years ago that people would jump into cars with strangers all over the planet and ask them to take them places, strangers who hadn't been to a driving course, hadn't been to chauffeur school, and didn't have an automobile licensed by the chauffeur association, and would just jump in cars. Yeah, why? Because the driver can rate the passenger can rate the driver. Airbnb. Who would have guessed 30 years ago that people would go stay in private homes that don't have a separate level of inspection, don't have a separate level of anything, and just go and stay in somebody's home. Well, goodness, what if they plant a bomb there? How do we know what these kind of people are, right? Well, it's because of real time, auditing. We can say this was a great place, this was a dump. Man, I wouldn't trust these people. Oh, these were the nicest people in the world. And there's actually more transparency in that than there is at Sheraton, Marriott, and Hilton. And so what happened was with this democratized ability to self audit, suddenly, within 20 years, there were as many hospitality rooms on the planet suddenly offered to the traveling public as there are in the entire chain of Hilton and Marriott combined. And all those rooms came about without pounding a nail or cutting a board or cutting a tree. That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And that's the power. That's the power of the invisible hand of the marketplace when it's released to actually create its own judgments and its own auditing within the marketplace. That's the possibility. And that's the kind of opportunity that would happen in the food system if we took the hands of the government off of it and allowed entrepreneurs to access their neighbors with a voluntary, consenting adult transaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. There's one thing I wanted to ask. You mentioned quite a bit back now, but can we go a bit more into the herbivore bird symbiosis? So I know you mentioned that the poultry come in afterwards and eat the bugs and stuff in the cow manure, if I've understood this correctly. But you also said there was benefit to having birds coming before herbivores as well as after. How does that bring benefits?
You're listening very carefully. That I appreciate you keying in on that. Actually, there really is no benefit of birds coming before herbivores. Okay. Birds always follow herbivores, but on our farm we do come before the chickens sometimes with the cows if the grass gets too long. Chickens don't like long grass; they like short grass, and so if the grass gets too long, then we'll actually use the cows to mow the grass so that when the chickens get on it, the grass is now short and the chickens can eat more of it. They like it better. It's more tender. And by shortening the grass ahead of the chickens, it reduces the likelihood that a skunk or possum or raccoon or fox will come through there, because those varmints, that vermin is subject to a great horned owl at night, that can see a possum and attack it and pick it up. Those predators generally like to slink around in tall grass and short edges of cover. And so by the cows or sheep grazing ahead of the chickens, it shortens the grass, not only to benefit the chickens, but to also reduce the likelihood of predation.
Okay, and then when the chickens are coming through, I think Will told me this. Is it correct that the way they help the land is through nitrogen in their feces? Are there any other ways they do this? I mean, not do this, but add benefit.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of benefits. Obviously, yeah, Will's exactly right. Adding manure, their own manure, but they also the main thing is that they spread out the cow pies, so that the cow pie that occupies a small space suddenly occupies a great big space, which scatters the fertility and balances it out better. They also eat the grasshoppers and crickets and ticks and all sorts of insects and things that would tend to eat forage, and so they sanitize that way. And they also with their scratching and pecking, they're actually scratching, like if you have Like if you have some laid over grass that's maybe choking out some mulchy type material, they'll scratch that out and freshen it up, liven it up, so that you then get plants that grow up through that mulch and actually stimulate thicker tillering of the plant of the forage of the plant community actually becomes thicker because of their light stimulation.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think we'll start to wrap it up here. How and then what other animals have we got? So we got how do the pigs interact with the land and then other animals?
So the pigs, the first and most important whatever job that the pigs do is they do our compost turning. So I'm sure you're familiar with these, windrow compost piles and with these big compost turners, that go through them and aerate it. And so we do that with pigs, and of course pigs enjoy doing it. And so when we feed hay in the barn or we have animals in a house, we have a very deep carbonaceous diaper. It might even get 4 feet deep with wood chips to absorb all the manure and urine. And the animals pack that, the cows pack that down so it's anaerobic. When we add corn to it, the corn's all mixed in. It ferments in the anaerobic bedding pack. So when the cows come out in the spring, then the pigs go in, and the pigs seek the fermented corn and aerate that bedding pack like a big, like a big egg beater, and go through and aerate it and turn it from anaerobic to aerobic compost. So that's the critical work that the pigs do. Now, obviously, we don't need the pigs to do that all the time. We only need that done about 2 months out of the year. So what are we going to do the other 10 months? So the other 10 months, the pigs are either, in the dead of winter, they're actually inside like the cows are on deep bedding, protected from the blizzards and the snow and all that. But in the summer, in the spring, summer, and fall, 9 months of the year, they're out on pig pastures that are silvo pastures. So these are widely spaced trees that the pigs then can find all the grass they want. They get forage, plus they get their self feeder, so they can eat as much grain as they want and salad. So they balance it out. Pigs don't watch television, so they're not bombarded with advertisements about what they're supposed to eat. And so the pigs actually know what they're supposed to eat. And then in the fall, we have what we call acorn glens up in the woods. We have a lot of forest here. We have a lot of oak trees that drop a lot of acorns. We have hickories as well. And so in the fall, all those nuts begin to drop, and we run the pigs strategically through these larger areas where the pigs can eat acorns and things. And they not only eat acorns to save feed costs, but they also lightly disturb the forest soil and help the leaves to decompose. So they stimulate decomposition and an understory that is more beneficial. So then we can go in strategically and thin the woods, take out crooked trees, poor trees, and we can work in the woods and open them up even a little bit more, and that stimulates the remaining large cathedral oak trees to bear more because now they're weeded and they're less encroached by trees near them, and 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 it and it helps them to grow better. So we actually are able to grow trees better and have a healthier forest because the pigs are helping to monetize. The pigs are monetizing our work in the woods. So often people don't work in their woods much because there's no money in the upgrade in the maintenance. But if pigs provide the maintenance economic incentive, then we not only get better woods, but we get paid for it as we go along.
Yeah. Throughout this discussion, you've mentioned like kind of the economic aspect of it, which obviously does play a large role. Did you ever study economics, have like a background in it, or did this kind of you kind of learn about this as you went?
Well, my dad was an accountant, so so he pushed a pretty sharp pencil, from day one, and so I learned that element from him, and then I've read a lot of business books and stuff, and so I've kind of self-taught, but I haven't taken any formal real formal business instruction.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Cool. I think just to kind of close this off, I think from what we've gone through here, is you're saying you think it has to be bottom up really to make a big change. I think I like this idea of like voting with your dollars or pounds if you're in the UK, or
Yeah.
euros.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
that,
Yes.
like you're saying, what do you with the food on your plate? What are you supporting by buying that?
Mm-hmm.
And is that what you want to be supporting for now and the future? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm grateful to be on your platform. I'm grateful to talk to the UK. I'm hoping I get to be there. With COVID now winding down, there's a little bit of interest regenerating now for me to come to the UK and do some presentations and some workshops. And I love the UK, and I'm looking forward to coming back at some point.
Awesome. Where can people support you, find your books, etc.?
Sure. I have a very low personal social media presence. I don't even have a smartphone. My phone is the old flip phone. If you've
Yeah.
ever seen those. To keep up with me, we're at Polyface Farms. Polyface, Polyface Farms, and that's a comprehensive website. I do a blog. I do a podcast myself called Beyond Labels. We have numerous informational video. Again, I've written a lot of books. The books are available there, I know. And so Polyface Farms is our website, and you can go and see whatever you want to see there. A lot of information.
Awesome. I'll put the link to that in the show notes. Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's it, Joel. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much. You too. Have a great day.
Goodbye.
Bye.